What are some skills that you recommend people between 20 and 30 to actually focus on right now?
What would you say got you through the difficult periods of building up your business?
So, what's the percentage of knowledge that you gain from formal education, meaning university, high school, as compared to the one that you've gained outside of? On today's episode, we had a sit down with Mosotho, who's an entrepreneur, motivational speaker, and an author. He talks about how he became a millionaire by age 25. He shares his secrets that you can use in order to be successful. He talks about different things, his perspective on education, but also he shares skills that you may need today in order to take advantage of AI and just be successful. So just sit down, relax, and enjoy the conversation. And if you find value in this video, like and subscribe. Thank you so much, Mo, for joining us. You are an author, you are an entrepreneur. And so I was wondering, one of the books that you wrote is called The 15 Page. Could you talk a little bit about that book and what was the point that you are trying to drive?
Firstly, thank you guys for having me. It's always good to have a chat with you guys. And congratulations on your podcast. Really like the name. It's I guess, a keen reminder for all your guests that you have to work hard to become part of the 1%. In terms of the book, I've authored a couple of books, 15 pages being one of them. And the book doesn't contain 15 pages as the name suggests. The concept came really from the fact that after reading a lot of business books in the search of knowledge, it's very difficult sometimes to draw the exact lessons, and you have to page through 500 pages and still make sense of the lessons that are hidden in someone's story. And what people don't realize is that obviously my story can never be your story, and vice versa. So sometimes you just want an instructional reference that tells you step by step what you need to do to start a business, especially in an environment where you don't have access to a lot of capital and a lot of resources. So the book is an instructional reference for mainly young entrepreneurs from low LSMs, and it just gives straight up business instructions and lessons without much story.
Really love that. Really love that. And so, one of the things that you mentioned is money isn't attracted to dreams. Money is not attracted to dreams. Could you a little bit expand on that?
Yeah, so I think as you're starting up and as you grow up, I guess, generally you start to find yourself and learn more about your character, and you start having dreams and start having ideas. But a lot of people get caught up in the dreaming and planning stage. And so I have a line that says you basically become an architect of your life forever, but you never ever lay the first brick. So you're always changing the plan and how you want your life to shape up, and always conceptualizing about different outcomes, but you never really implement. So it's historical fact that people who have made money are those who sometimes even take action without a complete plan. So what I meant by that was that don't get stuck in the planning phase for too long, and chances are the more you implement, the faster you learn, and hopefully the faster you make money.
I see. That's great. That's great. Q, you had a question?
Yeah, yeah, no, that is great. What point? Because you said that you are like an entrepreneur, right? What point in your business career did you write this book?
So, because it was like my very first book, it started very early in like my entrepreneurial journey. So I started my entrepreneurial journey straight out of university. So I dropped out of university with about 8 months to go before I graduated, and dived straight into business. And in the first year or two that I was in business, I basically wrote the book. I think when I was like 21 years old. So yeah, it was quite early, and the reason for that was, like I said, it didn't have much story because I didn't have much of a story to tell, but I had a lot of lessons that I had already learned straight out of dropping out. So yeah, it was quite early in my business career.
Yeah, because I feel like, right, it's really impressive that you were able to get all this wisdom like early on.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
in just reading the book, it really doesn't like beat around the bush. It gets like straight to the point, and I feel
yeah.
like that's something that a lot of people could use. Um, another thing, because you've been at it like for a little longer since you've written the book. Um, would you say that there would be anything that you would potentially like add to what you already placed in the book as far as like lessons are concerned?
That's a very good question. So I haven't really thought about it from that perspective. I think if there was anything more to add, it would be probably being like a separate book. So like as you were actually speaking, I actually thought about um, yeah, the perspective of your previous question about at what stage did I write the book. So the tone of the book probably contains a lot of like perspective mistakes, but that's important to have because it's almost like in my career I only had 15 pages of experience or knowledge to share with people. So I think that's very important because um, a lot of the books that are out now in like without criticizing them don't necessarily speak at like a very basic straightforward tone, and they may be like quite complex for people in the early stages and in that age range to actually understand how to draw the lessons, but most importantly how to convert those lessons into actions. So yeah, I wouldn't add anything else. It would probably be in a separate book.
Nice. So Mo, let's go back a little bit to your university time, right? Because that's where you and I met for the first time. And so I'll
Yeah,
never forget this. They were all in the cafeteria. And then you did mention that by 24, you'll be a millionaire. And everybody
yeah.
was like, no way. It was just like, unbelief was flying over the room. But then what gave you that? What was in your mind? What gave you that confidence to believe that you'll be able to do so?
Yeah. So look, I guess we'll get into it a bit later also, but it was a time where I was very frustrated. So I was literally driven by frustration of the system, let me call it that, because I felt like we were basically learning a lot of business concepts from people who didn't have experience in business. So I felt like the knowledge that was being transferred was like sort of capped. Um, and yeah, it also informed like my decision. It was also very difficult to say to my parents like, hey man, I don't think this thing is going to work out for me with almost just over 3 years already completed. But what really drove me was precisely that, the fact that I had put it out there that I have to basically make this business thing work, number one. But more than anything, I knew and I had realized that I have like a drive to learn actual lessons rather than just sitting in class, and I can actually utilize my time in yeah, learning by experience, which like I mentioned before, I feel is like the shortest route to whatever you deem as success. So as soon as I jumped on a plane after dropping out and after announcing to all my friends that I'm gonna make it, I had only one thing and one thing to do, and I landed, and that was to make sure that it worked.
So eventually down the line, you became a millionaire, right? So did it happen before you were 24 or after that? Did you hit your deadline?
Um, so honestly, now I'm basically 30 years old, so I can't remember the exact date, but it happened in my 24th year. I think it might have happened, yeah, maybe a couple of months after my birthday, so I was already 24 um, without being a millionaire, but I was quite close. So yeah, maybe quite late in the year because my birthday is in July. Maybe quite late in the year.
You made that money.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I think that connects pretty well to one thing about the that you wrote in the book that kind of stuck out to me, which you talked about how people should have at least three or four streams of income, like multiple streams of income, because if you don't have that, then if the one stream of income that you have dries up, then you're pretty much cooked, right?
Yeah.
So you're probably like one of the better people to address this question. What would you recommend would be like three or four streams of income for an individual coming right out of college that somebody should focus on?
Yeah. So I actually had a chat with a little cousin of mine who's pretty much in that phase where he's just finished university and he's unsure if he wants to go into business or like have a job or whatever it may be. And pretty much the advice there is pretty simple. Um, to this day, I don't go into businesses that I don't understand. So that's just like a base principle, right? So if you don't understand a business, you shouldn't go into it until you understand it. And understanding can vary at different levels, but you need to have at least some sort of understanding. It can be very basic, but then that will align also with how much income you make, right? Because yeah, it sounds like a cliche, but it's actually closely linked in terms of at the scale at which you solve problems is at the scale at which you earn money. So for a young person coming straight out of university, the one advantage they have is they have time and they have energy, right? Um, what they need to do is basically focus that into three or four skill sets that they have basic understanding of and attach a fee to that. And usually, if you can learn the habit of um, repetition and maybe out of the three or four things that you try in a year, possibly only two are going to work out, but you've still learned a couple of lessons from the other two that have failed. Um, and you can maybe revisit those ideas because sometimes businesses fail not because it's a bad idea, but maybe because at the time, the way you think and the way you implement and the processes that you have basically your capacity doesn't match what the business needs at that time. So yeah, as a young person, to simplify basically what I've said, you need to maximize your energy. At that age, you can work longer hours. You can learn skill sets, even jobs that are shunned upon, like plumbing, like trade jobs. So plumbing, um, being an electrician, whatever it may be, you can basically make use of social media to push your business. Maybe a lot of young people spend a lot of time on social media being social, but not realizing they can actually charge for that and help businesses spread. So yeah.
No, absolutely. I feel like this because it's funny you say that because me and Sam were just talking about this relatively recently. How
Mm-hmm.
everybody should start like some sort of social media, something whether or not it be like a YouTube channel, whether or not it be like a like a Instagram or some type of content. You know
Yeah,
because it can always be it can always be used to help scale what you already have going on. It's like say that
totally.
you're doing like the plumber thing, right?
Mm,
There's always going to be an audience of people that want to know how to
Yeah,
plumb. Is that a word? How to
yeah,
how to plumb toilets. You feel me?
It's all right, Q.
I got I got on a roll and I realized, but
yeah.
yeah, you get what I say.
Yeah.
Do you have any like examples from like your own experience on like what maybe like an example of like a separate stream of income or a separate skill that you developed to develop more income when you were
Yeah,
just starting out?
no, for sure. So, in the first 6 months of me coming back, dropping out from university, I pretty much did everything and anything really that I could. So I sold T-shirts and caps. So I started a trading label, and I knew that sentiment would push me to a certain level. And what I mean by that is there's certain businesses that you start and you can guarantee your friends and family support, but it not only gives you like a small income base, but also actually teaches you basic lessons at without much risk, right? So when I started my clothing label, I knew already before I had even made even a single T-shirt that I can sell a couple to my brother, to my sister, a couple to my friends. But then initially, like like I said, it was just for that and to attach a personal brand to it. But then I realized that I can actually make this into an actual business, and I started working on my personal brand, and I started learning how to build a brand with myself. Yeah, the clothing label became an actual business because then I was able to break into um, like beyond sentiment. So I started selling to strangers who just liked the product, and it had nothing to do with them being related to me or having any sort of relations to me. And in that, I was able to learn a lot of things. I worked at a restaurant as a waiter. I did bartending at events, not necessarily for like the income, but I knew that, for example, we have a festival here called it's called the DSTV Delicious Festival. But I knew that as a bartender, you get like an all access tag because you have to work at all the sections, and I knew that that gives me access to certain people that I wanted to speak to, right? So, like being intentional is also important in finding smart ways to get into spaces that you can't necessarily get into by just writing an email or calling someone, especially in the modern day. Sometimes knocking isn't enough because people are quite busy, and you can imagine like they get overwhelmed with so many requests from young people. So you have to find smart and innovative ways to get into the rooms, even if it's just to view how things work, to understand operations, to understand the endurance of standing and working long hours at an event, to get there early and understand how a stage is put up and what goes behind building this event. That teaches you a whole lot of background lessons where you learn about, um, yeah, not just looking at the finished product, but looking at the processes that go into maintaining what people ultimately see as like a success. So yeah,
Right. I think Mosoto, you mentioned something very important, right? Which is learning skills, right? And so now in the time of AI and technology, what are some skills that you recommend people between 20 and 30 to actually focus on right now?
yeah. Well, I guess you've touched on the AI part. So a lot of people, yeah, speak about AI and how it's, I guess, giving people like, or how it's revolutionized a lot of industries. Um, but a lot of people don't know how to use, for example, just ChatGPT, right? A lot of people in, I'd say, from even 30 to like 50, so people who aren't necessarily active students may know how to send basic prompts, but they may not know how to like get the full value of AI because they're prompting it incorrectly, right? Whereas a student nowadays, I know a lot, if not all students use some sort of AI, can even offer lessons of how get full value of the language model because they've sent so many prompts in so many different ways because they found so many innovative ways to, for example, not get caught for assignments or whatever it may be. But even in small things like that, lies an opportunity, lies a skill. Yeah, you could be very good at prompting and getting results. And we can offer that as a service because a lot of companies want to tap into the AI space, but they don't necessarily, no one has 10 years experience in AI because, or in prompting because 10 years ago we didn't have that. So in some industries, not having experience is actually a great thing because it allows opportunity for younger people to enter different markets. So yeah.
Nice. And so, on that note, right, entering different markets, you have entered different marketing, um, and technology as well. And so, what's your thinking process, right, from thinking to execution? How do you go about making sure that sorry, let me retract. How do you
Mm.
go about analyzing that this is actually a good business for me to jump into?
Mm. So I look at three main things. I look at my level of understanding. So I have a personal business audit that I do, right? So I look at my level of understanding of industry. I look at my level of risk, um, and then tied to that, I look at my ultimate downside, right? So it's very easy to get into industry based on prospects and success because every industry on paper looks amazing, right? I think all of that is useless because it's not attached to you, right? So it doesn't matter how much Elon is making in space uh, engineering, right? It's not attached to you, that success. What you have to look at is all the people who have failed um, in that sector and see if you can afford that. So that's why I said it's tied to your risk. So always look at the downsides of a business and say, okay, if I'm going to go into transportation, if I don't make money for 6 months, I'm going to be down this bad, and can I really afford to do that, right? And then you tie that to understanding, and that should give you uh, direction, if not a clear answer. It should give you direction into whether you should approach that market or not. So that's basically my process of analyzing industries, but again, tied to pretty much any advice anywhere. Circumstances are always different, right? So currently, I'm privileged to take a little bit more risk because I have a little bit more money to lose, right? But that may not be the same for other people. So you also just need to add a bit of your own reality to your risk analysis.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in what you were talking about, it came to mind that uh with the risk comes the possibility of not of having like the downtimes or having the difficult periods.
Mhm.
What would you say got you through the difficult periods of building up your business?
Yeah, so even today, what gets me through the difficulties is the fact that I'm never blindsided. Um, so, like I say, it's a pretty unique approach, but I almost expect to fail in pretty much every single business that I've gone into. So the surprise should be it working out, but what because I've analyzed like what's the worst of the worst, pretty much as it comes, I expect it and I find ways to like work out of it, right? So it's a lot better to deal with a challenge that you expect as opposed to being overly optimistic and thinking everything is going to be great, and then the challenges come, and what usually happens is probably you'll survive like the first wave, but at the second wave, most people then jump ship to something else and repeat the process, where I've gone into farming, for example, and the crops fail. And then Qynton tells me that he's making a whole lot of money in consulting. And I jump then to consulting, and then I fail at that, and then I'll jump at the next thing. So in failure, it also teaches you resilience, especially if you expect it. But seeing things through is also extremely important. So sometimes just on the other side of 5, 6 failures will come your first success. So yeah, in most cases, what's gotten me through it is that I've expected it, so I know how to get through it.
Yeah, I think that I've been a culprit of jumping
Yeah.
from opportunity to opportunity to opportunity.
Mm.
And it can get very tempting to do such a thing, especially when you hear how successful other people have been in such opportunities
Mm.
or such sectors. But in doing so, it's like I've always kind of figured, or I've always seen that in a lot of these things, I didn't necessarily have like a passion for exactly what I was hopping into. It was more so just because of the earning potential. What would you say is the role of passion in uh, deciding what to get into? Should you kind of sell out just for the passion that you have for the particular business or for the people that you're helping? Or shouldn't you get into it because it's a good opportunity or a mix of both? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Uh, sure. So it's a very like loaded question. So yeah, the answer equally is loaded in that it depends on sector, right? So going back to the plumbing example, you can't necessarily say you're passionate about unblocking drains, right? But if it's a business that's functional and solves a problem, and it makes money, you still stick it through. So in that case, you have to look past the passion, right? But there's certain businesses that do require you to be passionate, like farming. Um, if you don't have a passion for what goes into growing plants, what goes into growing like a good product, what goes into raising good cattle or whatever it is that you're farming. Um, so I would say there are passion-led industries, and there's industries where it doesn't really matter how you feel. It's more about getting things done. Um, so yeah, it really depends.
Getting things done, right? And so also you have a very interesting perspective of education, right? And probably this is our second to last topic going to touch your perspective on education. So for you, what's the ideal education? How does education look like in your world?
Yeah, so I think personally, it is very closely tied to. I guess it is the foundation of like most people's careers, right? But it doesn't make sense that we all learning the same thing to pursue different paths, right? So it's almost like imagine if every single sporting code had to train baseball, right? Even it doesn't matter whether you're gonna run for the rest of your life. Doesn't matter whether you're gonna, I don't know, play soccer. It doesn't matter whether you're gonna swim. But at the base of it, you have to all play baseball. That's pretty much how the education system is built currently, where we all have to learn a set of fundamentals to prepare us for different parts. So what didn't make sense to me is I think even just the three of us here, the way we interpret things and the way we learn things may be different. So I'm very realistic and direct in just a lot of my thinking and a lot of my operations. So like I like to understand how it makes sense practically, right? Whereas for the next person, maybe like I said, for the next person, stories could be the way they learn, or yeah, however way it may be. So I think education as like a one solution for everyone is is definitely outdated. And what proves that is when we do finally get the opportunity to learn by ourselves, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, we do it differently. Some people learn on YouTube, some people learn on the job, some people still prefer to sit with an instructor, um, and they can all reach the same outcome uh, with different learning paths. So we default to nature after the formal education structures. So yeah, I just think there's better ways to do it.
So right, so Mosoto, you have a wealth of knowledge, right? And so we're going to put it like 100%, not like you have that knowledge. So what's the percentage of knowledge that you gain from formal education, meaning university, high school, as compared to the one that you've gained outside of education?
Yeah,
Outside of the classroom.
honestly, I'd give formal education about 3%. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So mainly what I learned in formal education is that I'm not supposed to be there, um, which was very important for me because it pushed me to understand where I am supposed to be. Um, so if I had, I don't know, not dropped out and just seen it through, I possibly could have fallen into the trap of, I don't know, being quite exhausted after graduating and not necessarily having the energy or the drive, which, like I said, was fueled by frustration. So yeah, who can say how it would have turned out for me? But a lot of things that I learn are things that I want to learn, so then I learn them better, right? Also, the best grade you can get is practical results or yeah, whether it's tangible and intangible. That's pretty much the best grade you can get, the one that life gives you, because ultimately the grades in formal education pretty much mean nothing. They're not a true reflection of how much you've learned. It's more like a reflection of how much you can remember.
Yes, yes, can definitely say that. Appreciate First of all, appreciate your time here, Mo. I just had one last question, just as we're about to close.
Yes,
If
sir.
you had to speak to the listeners of this video,
Mm.
a person who's between the age of 20 and 30, a person who either is in college or looking to finish up or recently finished, what opportunities would you recommend for them to focus on or to get into?
Yeah, so like again, very subjective to location, to family background, to a whole lot of factors. But if I was to give like a general advice, definitely again trade, so trade skills, especially skills that you don't necessarily have to do yourself, but you can leverage off legacy businesses that just don't know how to adapt or haven't adapted um, to their new way of doing things. So it's almost like pumping fresh blood into an old dog, right? And you being the fresh blood, and ultimately, yeah, that that can bring you great returns. So look at opportunities, look at businesses that you've been exposed to growing up that refused to innovate for whatever reason, or that had oversight and didn't see the change, and use like information that you have that's relevant to basically apply your mind to how businesses can be improved. And like I said, always remember that your income is largely attached to um, how big of a problem you solve on a daily basis. So to say like specific businesses would be wrong, like I said, because it's subjective to your location, your family background, and your exposure. But just as a general advice, there's a lot of legacy businesses that refuse to think about the future.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Um, well, again, appreciate you for, utilizing some of your time to spend with us. I know that you are a busy man, so every second, every ounce of knowledge that we can get from you is genuinely appreciated. For the rest of the one percenters, I hope you guys found as much value in this video as we did. Make sure to like the video, and we shall see you guys in the next video.